Rogers and Benning. We'll be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream on Hail Varsity Radio with Andrew Rogers and Damon Benning.
Keeper Bennett gets a block. Georgia draws first block.
From the 22, 2nd and 10 for the Dogs. 32 seconds to go. Bennett to throw. Right angle. One-on-one coverage. And caught, I think. Yeah, touchdown, Mitchell.
The play action. Bennett looks down the middle. McConkey's wide open. Touchdown, Dogs.
Bennett takes the snap in the shotgun. Throws for the corner. Brock Bowers one-on-one. Caught. Touchdown. He ate him alive. Falls down into the end zone. 6 more for Georgia.
Georgia's relentlessness, and that's a missed PAT. Wow, this is definitely a news flash. Lesney hasn't done that. I don't think he's done it in his life.
Just taking shots this morning over in the producer's chair. Shane Schillerberg, everybody, talking about a missed PAT, and I'll tell you why in a moment. It's Coffee and Cream in the Morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency, alongside Damon Benning, Andrew Rogers, live from the H&H Chevrolet stage at Hail Varsity Club. Were you here at Hail Varsity Club? You can maybe let us know that yesterday, because there was a national championship watch party here. So I'd be interested to know how that event went down. Of course, you know, DB and I go to bed at 7 o'clock at night before the game even starts, because we have to be up at 5 in the morning. Oh, wait, that is a lie?
Yeah.
We don't do that?
Yeah.
Oh, no, we stay up way too late and then wake up tired in the morning to deliver your news.
Yeah, the whole tired thing. For some reason, Shane, how's my audio? Is it?
I'm a little quiet in my headset.
Am I on the struggle bus? I don't know. Shane, how do we sound?
You guys sound pretty good.
Oh, you sound like a regular person. But Andrew, for some other reason, it's just okay. Say something for me. I'm totally kidding. Listen, I think sleep's a little overrated.
Well, as a dad.
It is. It's extremely overrated.
A dad, a coach.
So many things.
Superhero.
Well, whose would I be?
You would be Batman.
Well, he's my favorite.
No way.
Yeah, way.
Out of left field.
Yeah, Batman is my absolute favorite.
Are you a Dark Knight guy?
Very much so.
That opening scene to the first Dark Knight movie may be one of the best of all time.
I love everything about Batman. A little neurotic.
Rich.
Pretty smart. Yeah, I mean, I could take or leave the money. I've never had a lot of money, so I don't know what I would do with it. I know one thing.
Batmobile?
No, I know 2 things for sure I would do. I would give a fair amount away, but so I've always wanted to do like a small, like only about 4 or 5 acres. No, I'm not farming. I want like a boys' home, like with my own principals and a couple of teachers and like a rec center. Like I want my own campus. Right? That's it.
Seems like you in a nutshell. So yeah.
Oh, so if that happened, I'm not sure. You'd have to come see me because I wouldn't.
You wouldn't leave.
No, it would be self-contained, right? And I would do like a little deal with our own grocery store, right? And I would teach guys like the value of money and shopping and stuff like that. That's what I would do.
You have it all planned out.
Well, that's the only reason I got into education.
So that you could one day start a boys' home?
Yeah.
Are you going to do it? Like, are you going to follow through?
I don't know. Do you know anybody that's like, you know, any grants, any federal grants? No, but
you know a lot of people.
Yeah, I don't know, man. It's just one of those things. Like, I would totally be at my sweet spot. Like, that would be about it.
Just don't run it out of Brookhaven.
No, because the neighborhood would be overrun. Hey, by the way, have you noticed that the basketball courts across the street, like, there's always somebody there?
Uh-huh.
Like, if it gets above 35, somebody's getting buckets in. I'm like,
I'm shocked it ain't your kids.
Well, so he eyes it every day, but he's a little. So they go over to the indoor. There's a little indoor facility called the 118 building that my buddy runs.
I'd rather play inside too.
And so they like, and he'll go over there by himself, turn the lights on, he'll clean up, leave it like he left it, because it's 4 minutes from us.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, yeah, but that's what I would do. But I was going through all these things last night because I was just perusing social media early yesterday, and a couple of people that I follow were having this conversation about, like, by the way, you can give us your thoughts, 888-638-4876. Let us know what you think. We're on 590 and 1480. At least I think we're on 590 this morning. So I say all that to say, like, they were having this conversation about, they were just playing these clips like Stetson Bennett.
Mm-hmm.
And the
you know his story?
Oh, God. The manufactured chip, is it a real chip? Because everybody was talking. It even crept its way into the broadcast. Kirk was a little snarky, right? He's like, well, I don't know. I didn't think you guys were going to, be in the playoffs, maybe
right.
not win it, but, like, he was like, come on. But it just got me thinking, like, of all the things that folks that get to that level are taught to think to get to that level, I thought maybe Stetson Bennett's perspective was accurate, because for them, they're the defending national champions. They lost all those guys to the draft. A lot of people were like, yeah, but people thought they were going to be good. Don't get me wrong. But Bama and Ohio State still had better odds. And I think for them, relative to how Georgia thinks, you're the defending national champ. You think you're going to be pretty good. You see two other people that are perceived better than you or have a better chance to do what they do than you. That would probably make you feel some type of way, whether we can glean from it or not. And I just got to thinking, that's exactly how we've been taught to think when you are trying to defend something or you want something, right? I just remember in 95, like, anything that was perceived some sort of a slight, it was like, oh man, nobody believes in us. And, like, we truly believe that. I went through a couple of hiccups during the season. We had one close game. It was Washington State. And we still, like, our meetings were so intense with, like, the players and, and that's not good enough. And they think this, and Lord have mercy, when people thought Florida was just a point and a half favor, whatever it was. And, we heard Corso pick Florida. It was like we went crazy. And it's just like, I just think that's how people that get to that point to keep themselves. I mean, what about Kirby Smart that you heard didn't seem like he's constantly on edge? Hey, Kirby, which, by the way, they asked one of the, I cringe every time I hear somebody ask a question pregame to a coach. Hey, how are you going to win tonight?
One word answer.
And Dykes was like, well, try to play good football.
Can't turn the ball over, things like that.
Right.
You know what you're going to get out of a coach that is coaching an underdog team. He's going to say, like, we got to be perfect.
Yeah. And Kirby, conversely, was like, we're going to get after him. We're going to pressure him. We're going to hunt tonight. And every word was intense. His halftime interview. Well, they're not very good in the third quarter. They're really good in the third quarter. So we're going to tell the score 0-0. We don't need to be perfect. We're going to stay on the gas. And I was like, you can tell that's how he is. It's not.
And that was the mentality all season for them.
Yeah.
Just don't take your foot off the gas.
And we kind of wondered sometimes, they would go through the motions, had a couple close games. But what did they always typically do? When it mattered, they played their best football. Like, they could truly light switch that thing. And the better the competition they played, I mean, we forget what they did to Tennessee when Tennessee was healthy. I mean, they controlled that
it gets
game
overlooked.
Start to finish. And I laughed. Remember when we were like, how is Tennessee ranked ahead of Georgia? You remember that?
Yeah.
I was like,
we were probably the only two people that have been on Georgia
ranked ahead of Georgia but in full disclosure, I never liked Tennessee because I thought they were terrible defensively.
And they were. Statistically, they absolutely were.
But it goes all the way back then how people really. What was that game? Was Georgia favored?
In what game?
Tennessee, Georgia. I don't think they were.
I think they were by 7, right?
Was it 7?
I think
6,
they were
7?
favored by 7 because people were like, "Hey, I like Tennessee plus 6.5." Or
Right.
plus 7.
I remember that. So it's like
But
going
we
back to
thought
the
a lot
very
of games
first
this
college
year-
football playoff bowl. I'm like, yeah, I don't know.
A lot of games this year for
Georgia's
Georgia,
pretty
though.
good.
We were like, how are you only a 4-point favorite?
Right.
How are you only a 12-point favorite?
Although it did pan out against Ohio State. Remember, I told you that number scares me to death because you look at
You
it on
did.
paper, like one team backed in, one team was supposed to be pretty good.
and that was
le-
only 4.5.
less than a key number, and it came down.
Mhm.
It went from 6.5 to 4.5.
Right.
And sure enough, no new hotels in Vegas were built on that night. But that's a complete football team. I'll tell you one other thing. Curious to get your thoughts outside of the story that we had to have hammered down our throat about the plight of Stetson Bennett, which is a fantastic story. And unlike Kirk Herbstreit, I don't believe it should be a book, but maybe it could be a book. It would be very regional, but it could be a book, right? I mean, in the South, it'll sell like crazy. You cross the Mason-Dixon line, it may be a wrap. But he made some throws last night that I think we take for granted.
Mhm.
Like I'm a big
Drop some dimes.
Like I like execution and I like play sequence. And
He did that though against Bama.
I'm
Natty,
paying
too, last
attention
year.
to line movement and how they move and what motion looks like and how guys are releasing. Because I always look at it how I would defend it. And my man is accurate. There had to be some times where TC was like, really, bro? Like, this is what we're on tonight. And Stetson Bennett was like, yeah, this is exactly what we're on.
He had a good amount of time on a lot of those throws, but
How
he
about
was
on the
also
move,
forced
though?
out of the pocket a lot. And, you can see how comfortable he is, not only throwing the football on the run, but tucking and running.
How about his fitness? Did you hear the deal where they said he hit 20 miles an hour on the treadmill last week? 20 miles an hour on the treadmill. That's moving.
That's most neighborhoods.
Right. And you feel like you're crawling.
Right.
That's
He has a lot of speed.
It's like he makes it look so easy.
Did he establish himself at all based on his play over the past 2 seasons as somebody that could be looked at as a top 10 draft pick in
Top 10?
quarterbacks?
No.
So he's still
Top
outside
10 quarterbacks or top 10?
So in the
quarterbacks?
top 10, we talk about 4 quarterbacks a lot.
No. But
you
if
think
Colt,
it's behind Anthony Richardson still?
if Colt McCoy's still playing, Stetson Bennett can get a job.
Stetson Bennett, you think he's going to be an all-time backup like Chase Daniel?
Well, I mean, why not? He's a better college quarterback than McDaniel was.
McDaniel or Chase Daniel?
Chase Daniel. I was going to say McBooger, but then I was thinking McFarland, and then I was thinking Booger. So
Right.
I just said McDaniel.
Hey,
but
something I thought about too last night because I fell into the black hole of Twitter and people talking about, hey, Bama would make this game more competitive. Before you start, because I know I know where your head's going already. Bama would make this game more competitive because Bama destroyed K-State. K-State beat TCU, and you can find the steps all the way back to knowing that, yes, TCU was a scrappy team. And at some point, there is a stopping point for a scrappy team, and it's when you face a juggernaut that has immense talent like we saw against Georgia. But here's for all the skeptics out there that do not like the college football playoff expansion. You could find an Alabama team that did not have their best year, that did not find their way into the top 4, and still end up in the national championship game because we are expanding the playoffs. You can also see the TCUs of the world still get there because they could be playing their best football by season's end. I think this is the exact reason why the College Football Playoff Committee said, hey, let's expand.
Yeah, I just don't. You just seldom see, if ever, a team with 3 consecutive upsets in the course of a college football season.
You'll get a few upsets here or there, especially once you get
you'd
there.
have to do it in 3 consecutive games, right? If you want to see
if you want to see like an 8 win, yeah.
So again,
but it allows for situations like this to say, hey, maybe the top 4 teams weren't in it.
You know what you're inviting? It's not necessarily more competition. You're inviting more margin for error.
Mm-hmm.
So it could be a key
No
injury.
doubt.
It could be a key injury. It could be just simple attrition. It's the more games you play, the more chances you have to have something go wrong. But it's a
safety net.
Does that supersede what could happen in a one-game winner-take-all scenario? There's lots of times you'll play a game and you're like, man, if they played 9 times, yeah, but you don't. Right? So, like, the reason I shake my head about that Twitter black hole is I can't stand that. I can't stand it. And it's because,
I mean, you're telling people that TCU did not deserve to be there.
And that's the beauty of sports. It doesn't work like that. Like, I don't even allow it's aggravating because I don't even allow myself to go there. You get one shot at it. Like, that's what makes sports unique. And if you're not in a 5-game series or a 7-game series, you don't get the whole. I remember I made the mistake, and I probably I got to own it, and I would take it back. I remember, and he's actually a good buddy. We got beat by Gretna 2 years ago, and I said, man, I just get the sense, on, and I said it in the same couple of sentences because I knew what I meant. I'm just not sure how it landed, and it apparently didn't land well to Gretna folks. But I said, gosh, I just get the sense, like, if we played that game a couple of times, we would fare better than we did last night. But that's the beauty of the championship, because the team, and I said this, the team that seizes the opportunity real time are the teams that give themselves the best chance to win. My buddy called up, and his son plays for Gretna. He's a fantastic player, and he's like, look, man, let's not hear that. Right. And he was a little put off because my partner at the time, for a couple of 10 days roughly, had been saying slam dunk, no brainer, West Side. So he was a little gassed up, but I just don't subscribe to the, like, I heard it. I tried to nip it in the bud. Somebody tweeted at me a week ago about Ohio State and Georgia, and Ohio State being the better team on that night. And I was like, you know what? If they were the better team, they wouldn't cough up they wouldn't get outscored 18-3 in the fourth quarter. Like, part of being really good teams is knowing when to play well. And I always think that you should reward that. And especially in football, because you don't get do-overs. And it's the one sport where the level of physicality and the you give yourself every chance in a 1-game scenario to go out there and lay it on the line. So every time I hear that, man, it makes my skin crawl. It just does.
Which part? The Bama part or the college football player?
Getting them both, because they're kind of one and the same. But
I like the margin for error, though, because
it's fine. But we haven't. College football hasn't gotten it wrong, though. Every year, we think the best team in college football has won the national championship. So the bowl games are for entertainment. I want to see, when you get to that stage, I want to see who the best team is. If I want to be entertained and just watch games,
do you want it to be a cakewalk?
I can't. It is what it is. Like,
but see, by expanding the playoffs, you'll still get the winner. You'll still get the best team in college football by game's end. But you may get the best game,
maybe. But again,
and that's why it's built.
Yeah, but I don't think that's not why it's built.
It's built to get the best game there.
No, it's built for revenue.
Well, of course. You're doing it for money.
That's the number. It has nothing to do.
But it helps with margin for error too.
It has nothing to do with competition. It has nothing to do with competitive balance. The college football playoff expansion has nothing to do with competitive balance.
So you don't think that a 6-seeded Alabama team this year, if they would have went to the national championship and played Georgia, that game wouldn't have been closer?
It might have been closer, but it
would have been a lot more competitive than what we saw last night.
Then handle your business.
I'm with you there. I'm with you. But there are so many things that happen throughout a season. Like you said, there's a big injury here, or, you don't get this guy back until there. And now you finally get them back. You're back together. Your team put a good enough effort together to get to the playoffs.
Not into
now they could
built-in
do it.
contingencies when you compete. It's so, and you got to think, well, you don't have to, because you're not super aware, but it's just how I've been built. Right. So like to talk me into it or out of it would be extremely difficult because I only know one way. Right. Your number one listen, we're in a state tournament and, all right, Sean Peters, our horse can't pitch. Hey, who's next up? Chick Gatzmeyer got a bad elbow. Hey, who's next up? Dan Craig, you got the ball.
I'm all about the next up mentality.
Hey, T. Fraze, you got blood clots. Like I've never had the opportunity to say, man, if we only listen, we were a prohibitive favorite at state and went to Rosenblatt and got beat by a team in Burke that played significantly better than we did. We got shut down by a horse on the mound, and I'm like, God, we beat this guy before this year. But you know what? We didn't get it done on the biggest stage, so you tip your cap. And it's like, I'm sure Ralston or somebody could have been saying, man, if we would have, like, the beautiful thing about sports is you're not afforded that luxury. And I think that's what keeps the competitive edge going. Because when you're trying to get there, and it's like an invite-only party, right? The criteria to get invited to the party is a certain whatever. And you want if you want a better party, have the folks that are on the outside looking in have to kind of be better. Don't come back to the pack just for the sake of having a bigger, better party. And
I think they can be better, though, in regards to you expand the playoff. You allow a team, because Miami always starts up top and then falls back. We'll say Miami, for example. You allow a team that, say a Miami would be at 8 by season's end. Well, by seeing them there, you're going to get high school recruits, portal guys that say, hey, this team was competing to get to the championship last year. So maybe I tend to go my commitment that route because I know I could play for that team. And now you're building more teams to get there quicker, maybe faster than you would.
Hey, so remember when we were talking playoff expansion 3 years ago, and who was the poster child? Oh, man, what about Cincinnati and UCF? Oh, man, Cincinnati. Where are Cincinnati and UCF now? Just 2 years removed. Those aren't
Without
the team,
a coach. Those
aren't the teams that are a couple of portal guys away from competing for national championships. Where are Cincinnati and UCF just 2 years removed from
what a Power 5 school would be?
So are you're into auto bids, or how would that work?
Auto bids in regards to what?
The playoffs. Right? Like, do you like auto bids for, like, if you finish blank, then if you meet certain criteria without being able to win your conference, or however you're going to do this, like,
it's kind of like the NFL. You have a good enough record to make the playoffs, you're in. So like if there's a playoff structure built, like if you have a good enough record in college, then you're in.
But in a league that's built on parity with a salary cap, that's different. So to use the NFL, I think, is a lousy example.
Well, it was just based strictly on record example.
So my point in saying what the college playoff expansion is, and I've thought a ton about this, is without leveling the protocol within the conferences in terms of how you get there, for another 8, 9, 10 years, you're going to look at the college football playoff odds, and they're going to look a lot alike. You look at 2023, the transfer portal has been around since 2018, right? Early signing period came in 2017. All these things to help competitive balance, freedom of movement, this, that, and the other. Google 2023 playoff odds. They'll look a lot like 2024. And that's not to say, oh, man, DB, you wet blanket. That doesn't mean that my team can't. No, they can. It's going to happen every couple of years. But the structure as it stands today is not built for competitive balance. If you wanted competitive balance, you do the pruning before the invites to the party. You do a lot better screening. You wouldn't just say, oh, hey, we want to keep the riffraffs out of the party, or let's invite fewer, or we want more people. Like you would screen better during the regular season. I'm open to it. We take a break and listen. I just don't think how we think a 12 winning 3 games in a row is somehow more feasible than TCU winning in a one-time matchup against Georgia.
We'll talk more about it next. We'll also get to Michigan Lance's phone call. Stick around on line 1. It's Coffee and Cream in the Morning on Hail Varsity Radio. If you want to get involved in the show, 888-638-4876. More next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 5 minutes.
The best thing about a college football is you don't get a 9-7.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
From the 22, 2nd and 10 for the Dogs. 32 seconds to go. Bennett to throw. Right angle, one-on-one coverage, and caught, I think. Yeah, touchdown, Mitchell.
Back with you, Coffee and Cream in the morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency, live from the H&H Chevrolet stage at Hail Varsity Club. We thank you for joining us, 590 ESPN, 1480 ESPN in Lincoln. Live on YouTube, live on Twitter, alongside Damon Benning, Andrew Rogers, talking national championship football. And DB and I had a good back and forth in the break to continue our conversation. And, I agree, DB. I agree that the best team will win by time's end in regards to your competitive balance point of view. It's built for pure entertainment.
No, if that's the discussion, cool. Because I'm not going to debate that. I like watching college football, but that's what the bowls are for.
But not only is it built for entertainment, it's also built for maybe those unlikely teams that could potentially pull off an upset that adds to the entertainment, but then also builds to that underdog story like we got with a TCU in the title game. But by season's end, I'm with you, the best team wins. In regards to competitive balance, we said from the very beginning that Georgia was the best team in college football. We've been saying it for weeks on throughout the season.
So for like the whole transitive property, which anybody that's ever listened to me knows I can't stand it in sports, right? If such and such beat such and such, and then they beat such and such, and then why didn't Ohio State look better against Michigan? Why for 2 years has Michigan just significantly beat you up? But then, lo and behold, TCU finds a way to play Michigan tough. Why? Because Michigan did some things uncharacteristically that they normally don't
especially on the defensive side of the ball.
That they normally don't do. But see, that's what happens. Now, what's the likelihood, Drew Down, that you would see that happen 2 weeks in a row?
Not very high.
Not very high.
I'm with you there.
Not very high.
I'm with you.
Right? So, and what did we see from TCU all year? Opportunistic defense, the key turnover. Shoot, they scored twice on defense against Michigan. And they played a team last night that didn't make any mistakes. And when you're forced to play fundamentally sound defense, like that tackling, and that was crazy to watch. Right? And they had legitimately 8 days to prepare. I know the number of times off, but you want to give your guys a little bit of a break too. So it's like, I don't know. I mean, would Michigan play? Would Michigan play like that again if they played TCU? No, but see, on that given night, it just didn't happen.
To add to this, our poll question today, it's not really a poll question, more of a poll statement. Michigan would have beaten Georgia, true or false? That's just all I put, because I saw that poll on Twitter last night, and I'm like, okay, now why are we just grasping for straws now about trying to make this game more competitive than it is and what we're seeing? And based on what we last saw from Michigan, there's no way they would have beaten this Georgia team because they were exploited. They were absolutely exploited against TCU. So why would you think that Georgia wouldn't also beat Michigan? Well, you're asking for that more competitive game. That's what the people at least want. That may not be what the sports fan or the player that DB wants, but at least for the general public, that's what the people want.
And hear my heart, it's not for me. I'm just giving you why.
No,
I don't think it's a good idea.
I love the perspective.
I really think, listen, college football wants to make money. It is king only to it only takes a backseat. It's Prince to the NFL. So I mean, America loves its football, but I don't know, man. I think we did it backwards for the sake of money, and I think that's a hill I'm willing to die on.
Yeah, well, I'll go on that hill with you. I mean, it's all about money.
It's all about
money. It's all about entertainment.
And I'm not saying, well,
it's all about fun.
No poop, right? Like it is about money. Like I'm conceding that. I'm saying they had an opportunity to get it right and still make money, right? The conference uniformity. But since these commissioners in their conference operate on an island, it's like it's bad business, I think, to have it both ways. You don't want to control your entities, but be able to have all your entities take part. Like that's anarchy. You get to do what you want to do, but at the end, hey, you can still be a part of my club. Yeah, I just don't know that you want to govern like that. Again, go sit down and tell the Pac-12 that all things being equal, they love the college football playoff expansion. Because truth be told, you think USC is winning 3 games in a row based on how they're built right now?
No, not on.
You think Oregon is winning 3 games in a row? Like what other Clemson? Like what are we talking about here? But
the only surefire example is Bama.
Until you can get a bye game in November, take a look at this non-con schedule and have it be validated because you plan.
What do you think about Utah?
UT Martin, Ball State, and UAB.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
That's Georgia's non-con next year. Why do they get to do that? Because they play in the SEC. Mm-hmm. And it's like, well, the conference will buoy itself.
Yeah, look at Georgia's season schedule next year.
Look at the bottom of the SEC.
Not very great.
Like, I don't know.
Right.
You know what I mean? I don't know. Tell that to the Big 12. The Big 12 panicked because it was Baylor and TCU in the discussion, and they get left out. So they're like, oh, shoot, man. We got to have this revenue-generating conference title game where you're going to cannibalize yourself. If it was Texas or Oklahoma, you wouldn't have had to decide to play a conference game, a conference championship game. And why are you still playing those? Do you know why? Revenue. So it's like, and we just lap it all up. We just lap it all up. It's like, I don't know.
What are your thoughts? 888-638-4876. Michigan Lance on line 1 here to talk about the national championship. Good morning, man.
Good morning. How you doing, fellas?
Good. President of the Hardball Fan Club. What's up?
Hey, man. I don't know what's going on there.
Captain Harbaugh.
he for sure tricked off the that semifinal game for sure, though.
Man, you think Michigan is one of those teams that was like, man, we could have done that. But
most definitely. Right. Well, they could have done that to TCU if they weren't trying to be cute. The stupid goal line plays. That game was about to get out of hand, but they did that to themselves. And I knew Georgia was going to do what they do, what they did. Stetson Bennett really impressed me this year.
Yep, me too.
But you got to kind of put it in some context too, don't you? I mean, isn't he the same age as like Lamar Jackson?
Listen,
and
I'm just telling you, I hear that low-hanging fruit, and tell that to Brandon Whedon. Tell that to Zach Wilson.
Okay.
There are lots.
And what about well, hold on a second. And Chris Winkie. But here's the difference between like Brandon Whedon and Chris Winkie, right? Those guys didn't start in college and go through 6-7 years of college, though.
Guess what? Those guys wouldn't have had the resolve that Stetson Bennett did to get sent away to come back. I don't know if you heard that narrative last night, Lance, but it wasn't always rainbows and butterflies for Stetson
Obviously,
Bennett.
We heard that.
So having
that tragic story.
Yeah.
That was so much trauma.
So having some resolve matters too, right? It's not just.
I agree.
It's not just because you're X amount of age. Because guess what? Nobody that's having this conversation, with the exception of maybe Drew Down, because he's still in that world, is hearkening to go back to 25. It's not like you and I look at 25 and we're like, oh man, all that wisdom and poise we had. And sure, is it relative to the 21-year-old? Absolutely, but that's no lock, stock, gimme.
Okay, what about this? I hear what you're saying. Now understand what I'm saying. What if Damon Benning got to play in 97 and 98? Because the Damon Benning in 96 wasn't the same Damon Benning in 94 and 95 as a player.
It's valid.
And maturity, mentality.
Valid. That's
you know what I'm saying? So that's what I'm talking about. He got to go through 6-7 years of college and mature within that sport and that school and get better. And this is where we're at. This is where he's at. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not the stop and go or, hey, he's the most mature guy ever. I'm just saying he got to mature within Georgia, within college football. And the last 2 years, he's not – Damon, when your senior year, you were probably still taking full-time classes.
Yeah.
My man, the last 2 years has probably taken one class a semester.
Too, you know, with injuries
that's a lot of
and things like that.
That's a lot of time to work on
football. Made a solid point.
We'll talk more next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
A college football heavy morning here on Hail Varsity Radio. It's coffee and cream in the morning, the only way to start your morning, live from the H&H Chevrolet stage at Hail Varsity Club alongside Damon Benning, Andrew Rogers. We got into national championship talk already, a little bit down the alley of the college football playoff expansion, and we have a lot more to get to, including a new signee for the Huskers that improved their one portion of the offensive room. We'll talk a little bit about Nebraska and Illinois tonight. And then we'll speak with Matt Brown, senior editor of NCAA football for The Athletic. And we'll end the show like we tend to always do now on a Tuesday with Joelle Lorenzi. But for now, I want to get into this because I was reading a lot about the current coaching staff at Nebraska. Mm-hmm. Matt Rule, Marcus Satterfield, Tony White, they never seem to have a day off. And, you know, at some point, they're going to be in a bowl game. At some point, they could be competing for a national championship.
From your lips to God's ears.
And it takes me into deep thought, and we were conversing back and forth about this of how stretched thin can you be as a coach? Because it seems, because they never have a day off, whether they're in bowl contention or not, something has to, like, you have to do away with something in regards to college football.
Completely agree. I completely agree.
Like how Kirby Smart and the rest of his staff, they've been preparing for this game in particular.
Especially in the month of December, right? Just because of the early signing period. You've got all the portal movement before it opens and closes. You've got bowl preparation. And when it goes to 12, you'll have that many more teams, and there'll be the teams at the top, right? That will be focused on playoff preparation. Mm-hmm. I just the
early signing period's weird. It's nice, but it's weird because you have a lot of teams that are more focused on them right now opposed to them for the future.
So interestingly enough, and I have to go back and gosh, it was only 5 years ago, 17 was early signing. Shane, when the early signing period started? 2017.
Yes,
I'm asking Shane, right?
Shane, did you see how he looked at you two? Like, don't ask me.
Yeah, I don't.
Not me.
Yeah, Shane's like,
I don't know.
I was just teasing.
Sorry, I wasn't paying any attention.
But wasn't its intent originally to take the recruiting pressure off of the prospective athletes?
Correct.
I could be misremembering because that is a thing. 888-638-4876 or hit me on Twitter. Am I getting that wrong? That was the original intent?
Even if it wasn't the original intent, that makes sense.
So if that's the case, plus you now have open portal shuffling with that period being open in December, it seems to me that would be more stressful for the high school student or the junior college student because rosters are in flux. Mm-hmm. You could probably make a more well-informed or a better decision if you knew,
given some time.
Right. Like if I'm Zane Flores,
right,
and Spencer Sanders decides in December that he's leaving, I'm sure that changes Oklahoma State's plans too.
Right. Because, are we going to buy right into a true freshman?
Yeah, do you go back to Zane and say, hey, we're bringing in another quarterback? Mm-hmm. Like, you know what I mean? So if its original intent was to alleviate some recruiting pressure from prospective high school student athletes,
an argument can be made that it adds more.
That it's added. It's now become more convoluted. So that's one thing. The movement in which players can come and go in the month of December is too much to manage because you have to recruit your own team still. And you're going to have 12 more teams getting ready for what you think is going to be highly competitive playoff football. And
I hope you're surprised, because if you're not surprised, it's going to be a problem moving forward.
Yeah, I just think, I don't know if it's the same thing or not, but I think,
And I don't mean a problem between me and you. I mean for college football. If it's not competitive, it's going to be an issue because people will start addressing the lack of competitiveness.
yeah, I don't know what you do. I don't know like what you move. I guess I would probably feel better. Like I do know, like there's 2 guys on Nebraska staff that have suggested, that have some ideas with what to do with the transfer portal. I don't know if it'll ever come to fruition, but I think they would like to see, if you're going to treat it like free agency, I think they would like to see 2 separate periods, right?
Mm-hmm.
One for underclassmen and one for grad transfers. Now, when those times would be, they hadn't. Well, he in particular. Well,
when can you fit that in to the college football schedule as it is now?
I for sure think you have to have movement, the ability to move after spring, right? Like,
right.
I want.
You see your guys. You see it. You see how it's
you're like, oh,
meshing. What's
you're
working,
like, oh,
what's
shoot,
not.
this isn't for me.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't know what you do with December. Right, I like that.
December's just jam packed, and it's almost like they want college football to be on the tip of your tongue in every conversation.
And that's fine because it has moved.
You're talking about bowl games.
Listen, it has moved into college football is at least a 10-month season now, at least, depending on how you view June and July, because with the portal being open post spring, you get April and May. You're already getting it for 8 months from August to March, however many months that is,
right?
6. So it's like,
what if you broke up the early signing period? What if you broke it up and you shortened it for both? So you did it for underclassmen and grad transfers.
That was kind of his thought process. But I mean, when you're talking about a guy that, or a couple that have pro experience, they're not panicking from managing the portal because they do kind of look at it like free agency.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they feel good because they have so many connections from.
And they don't want to be on a time crunch to.
So I think they look at it as kind of an advantage in the portal, but something would have to change in December, I would think, because at what point do you compromise the product? Because remember, I'm just thinking out loud.
We're always thinking out loud. Ed Sheeran style.
I wish I was that kind of crooner. I probably wouldn't be sitting next to you. So
you'd also be a ginger.
I think it's more stressful for the student athlete. And I'm not, listen, I cue the cry me a river, you get free gear, now you get NIL money. What I'm saying is the design in which the original premise in which you put the rules in place are now becoming counterproductive because there's a lot going on. That's what I'm saying. So if the original premise was, hey, we want to lighten the burden, we want to make it equal for players to move because coaches can come and go, and sometimes you need a mulligan because you make the wrong school choice, we're going to open this up to you. All that's fine, but it just seems convoluted now.
You think you're going to lay it all in on like wrong choice? Like that kind of set uneasy with me when you said, hey, because you made the wrong choice, you can't find your way.
Yeah, absolutely. Drew Down, how else will you explain a guy committing to a coach unseen because he's Deion Sanders?
Well, that's a good example. I meant more from like the case of, hey, I was bought in, this was for me, and then, I didn't really get the playing time I wanted, so I'm going to go somewhere else.
Sometimes that happens.
Right.
Sometimes that happens, but
in regards to your Deion Sanders example, yes, 100%.
Well, listen, there's a lot of guys that get recruited to fall in love with the wrong things.
Mm-hmm.
But
things change too when you get there.
Which is really what I'm speaking to. When I talk about the wrong choice, listen, I've made the wrong job choice and felt like I was pretty informed. They're just things that I didn't know
Mhm.
once I got there. I mean, that happens, right? And I wasn't really a
Yeah.
grown up yet. I was still pretty immature, but like those kinds of so you can make the
Mhm.
wrong choice. I think part of that is being able to say, hey, listen, you know what? Just the honesty. This isn't a good fit for me. I can't function in this environment. I think it would be in my best interest to do something else.
Mhm.
I don't have any problems with that. Shoot, adults do it every day. Every day they change jobs. So, like, I get that. And they're supposed to be more experienced and more savvy than you are between 18 and
that's
this,
what I was referring to. We're talking about 18, 19-year-olds most of the time. That,
yeah, you get caught up.
You get caught up in the moment. You're leaving high school. You're on a high because in front of your friends and family, you're going to play at the big school.
You get to jump over sports cars. You get to take
Mhm.
pictures in, thrones.
It's a maturity thing. But I think
you get to go to on-campus parties.
It's helpful. Like, for the most part, the early signing period is for guys like that matured in a year, that, maybe did some mental reflecting of, hey,
or guys
I grew up 5 years in about the span of one.
Or guys that are graduating early, right? And want to be on campus. Right?
Right.
I don't want to forget about those guys either, because that matters. I think. Does that matter?
I think so.
I need to look at some statistics as of late about early enrollees participating in spring ball and how much that does help.
Lots more to get
Or
to.
you could be 30 like Casey Thompson, miss spring, and have to watch another quarterback or quarterbacks play and then fit right in.
Lots more to get to, including Illinois, Nebraska basketball tonight. More on Coffee and Cream next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream on Hail Varsity Radio with Andrew Rogers and Damon Benning.
Touchdown! He ate him alive! Falling down into the end zone. 6 more for Georgia.
Georgia's relentlessness, and that's a missed PAT. Wow, this is definitely a news flash. Lesney hasn't done that. I don't think he's done it in his life.
This dude just rubbing it in.
Oh, that
rubbing it in.
That was the funniest thing all night. I mean, to be honest.
So for those that remember, we highlighted our picks. I printed out the entire bowl schedule. We highlighted who we thought would win straight up. DB ended with 26 out of the 42. Shaner and I both ended with 21 out of 42. And both had Georgia in the national championship game and winning.
You're so mad.
So to tie break, we picked the total score. And Shaner, like he does on the regular, enjoys the stall tactic.
Playing dumb.
Made me go first. I was getting frustrated because he wasn't
Ham-hawed
going.
around.
I had my number written down. I said my number out loud. Shouldn't have done that because Shane followed up by taking one number below me.
I'll let you finish. Roughly, because remember, Jacob Padilla walked in. How long after you said 73 did it take Shane to give an answer?
Jacob gave us his before Shane.
At least 5 minutes.
At least.
Right?
At least 5 minutes. Well, I don't really know football.
You put me on the spot.
This is unfair.
What do you mean?
I had to change my tire.
So when you say total, do you mean... Like he asked all these questions, right?
Relentlessness, and that's a missed PAT.
So I said...
Wow, this is definitely a news flash. And Lesney hasn't done that. I don't think he's done it in his life.
So I said the final would be a grand total of 73 points.
And that's a missed PAT.
And Shane, because he's Shane, chose 72. Tried to Price is Right me, even though he technically would not have won on the Price is Right because you can't go above the total. However, he gets it right on the nose and would get the $500 or $1,000 that would come and then join Drew Carey on the stage. But for me, I had to watch a kicker, a Georgia kicker. Was this the backup kicker?
No.
Like it was the regular guy. Because I didn't know. I mean, we were up 65-7 at this point.
Did you not hear the? Did you not hear?
Oh, I didn't pay attention other
Shane,
than miss
go ahead.
PAT.
What did Fowler say? He doesn't.
Relentlessness, and that's a missed PAT.
I don't think he's ever what, Shane? What was the end of that?
Relentlessness, and that's a missed PAT. Wow, this is definitely a news flash.
Okay, there it is.
I don't think he's done it in his life.
Oh, good. Oh, good. All right. So I picked 73. Shane picked 72. That PAT would have put it exactly at 73. And no joke. And I did it to myself.
Right now, you gonna be all right?
I did. You're gonna get the worst breakfast.
You must be mad. You're mad. You're mad.
You can hear him. He's not even on headset, and you can hear him.
I just think the group text was hilarious.
So I had preloaded. I like my eggs over easy.
Yeah. You already were gonna hit 10.
I was right about to hit 10, and then I saw him shank it left like the Ohio State kicker. And this is what I texted both DB and Shane last night. Let's pull up the text, Shane. If this game ends at 72 because of that missed PAT, I'm gonna lose my mind. And 8 minutes left in the game.
Read Shane, almost 9. Read Shane's response.
That won't happen from Shane.
I don't know.
I didn't respond to it because I knew it would happen.
I was laughing my head off.
And then to just rub salt in the wound.
Sorry, I'm so sorry.
Instead of Shane just like letting it happen, he goes back after the game ends and laughs at my message.
Yeah. That's like the guys and gals that sit in the cut on Twitter and they'll like pull something up. That's why I went ahead and apologized about my Mike Tomlin reference, because like in week 7, I was having this discussion on social media with some people, and I'm like, winning is really, really hard, like consistency, because somebody had just used Nick Saban as a reference as a coach that failed in the NFL. And I was like, and I asked Shanley, because he was on the thread, I go, why do we keep using Saban as a reference in the NFL as a failed coach? Like, he's 2 games over 500. Do you know how hard that is? I said, there's only one guy that's on that kind of run, and that's going to end this year, and that's Mike Tomlin. That's what I said. It was about that on Twitter after week 7, and all he does is go get to 9-8. So I automatically apologized so I wouldn't make freezing cold takes.
Right. Well, okay. So long story short, I'm buying breakfast.
So that's a missed PAT.
I wish I could end him.
He's tough.
So what are we having? What are we eating for breakfast?
I don't know. I just want meat. I don't care.
You just want meat?
Yeah. So can I pick, since you like
Yeah.
over easy?
Mm-hmm.
I think you just hit over easy.
Okay.
168th and Q on a side up, because they have some of.
Are they open early in the morning?
Yeah. And they have drive-through.
Okay.
I want a side of their sausage patties.
Hold on. Let me take down your order because I like you.
Yeah, side of sausage patties. And
Shane, you get whatever I bring you.
And a side of bacon.
Lesney hasn't done that. I don't think he's done it in his life.
Side of sausage patties.
Oh, I get up to $13, right? Because that was the cap.
Sure.
2 sides of bacon, 1 side of sausage patties.
2 sides of bacon, 1 side.
Yep.
Okay, and what did you want? Like what's the main course?
I don't.
That's it?
Yeah.
You just want 2 sides of bacon.
Yes.
And 1 sausage patty.
Yeah, side of sausage. Yeah. Trust me.
So like you just want like a bucket of bacon, essentially.
Yeah. Have you not
and
seen
a patty
me eat before?
I'm just double checking.
No, that'll work.
Shane, you get whatever I bring you. Okay.
I don't like for eggs to travel.
Oh, I'm so happy! I'm so happy! This is the best day of my life!
He's killing you.
It's my favorite movie.
Because we saw so many things this college football season. Like, what are the odds? Backdoor covers, ridiculous covers, crazy plays, comebacks, exciting games, all to have it come down to that dud of a national championship game, except for the point total.
Relentlessness.
I
That's
still
a missed
think.
PAT.
So I asked all our recruiting guys. I don't know if they're up yet, but this was my question to the recruiting guys, because I think it matters a little bit before we have this if we're going to solve all the world's problems, because I don't want to be disingenuous, right? So I asked our recruiting guys, was the original intent of the early signing period to alleviate the pressure from the high school recruits? Do you think that was the original intent? Because once I know the answer to that question,
I think form your opinion.
I think
better.
we can probably figure out what to do with the month of December, because now you're starting to hear like college coaches. Remember once upon a time when people thought it was easier to coach in the NFL or in college than it was in the NFL?
Yeah.
Is that not changed? You know who a great authority on that is? Coach Rule. In terms of calendar, now he pretty much works the same, but I'll be curious if he shares his thoughts, and he probably won't get into like the hours, but college football has got to be much more year-round than the NFL.
100%.
Okay.
I am completely there with you, because it's interesting to look at those perspectives and think, wow, Why wouldn't you say it's harder to coach at the NFL level? It's obvious because you're dealing with men, and how do you coach men at this point?
And
They've already
a lot of
done
those
it.
guys are under
It's-
contract.
right? And it's easier to mold somebody that's 18 years old to make them look a certain way for your team.
I don't know about that.
In regards to calendar year, as you said, it is much more demanding than it is in the NFL. In college, I'm saying.
Yeah, would you rather try to coach me at 18 or Cam Akers at 23? Well, Cam Akers may not be a good example if he has the Rams, because not sure what Cam Akers is doing. Pick a different running back. Josh Jacobs.
You would think it's easier to coach a guy like him because you know his strengths.
And those guys are professionals.
Right. And he's already elevated his game to get there.
Right.
So in college, when I say you have to mold them, you have to really get them to mature to be college level athletes. And then if they want to play at the next level, you have to have them take that next step.
I think college coaching is significantly more hours.
I would agree.
I really do.
People look at college and think, oh, you have the summers off and, oh, you're not doing anything from, what is it, January 15th.
Hey, how about how we thumb our nose
game?
up at the coaches now for like not doing any summer camps? Hey, you hosting any camps? Like, when are you going to get guys on your campus? And it's like, wait a minute, I only get my 2.5 weeks in July to go on vacation.
There are a lot of coaches that go to high schools in the wintertime to watch basketball games, to look for more versatile athletes or watch a guy they recruited. They're always sparking those relationships.
Yeah.
Always.
I just think it's a lot harder to always convince people that are on your campus to stay than it is in the NFL. Like, that's 20% of coaching now. Is not begging, but basically putting on display why people should stay in the fray, which is why I liked behind the scenes. I got into this a long time ago. What I like what Trev was doing with the athletic department and the construction of the new complex and being diverse in their practices and business practices and kind of being other centered, because the more that you can make your department and your facility like home, the less apt athletes are to want to leave, because there's something about security and comfort, right? Just Maslow's hierarchy, if you're in education, where if those basic needs are met, I think student athletes can hang in there a lot more. So I like trying to build from within to work your way out to limit the variables.
888-638-4876 if you'd like to be involved on the show. On line one, we've got Brian. Oh, now he's gone.
We just lost B.
He dropped out.
I was just there, and then he popped out. But we'll change gears at this point then and talk.
I wonder, we could have got his comments on the Cowboys and the Commanders, or the Foreskins, as he once called them.
Maybe he'll call back.
Yeah, he's not a Washington fan.
Oh, really? What told you that?
Well, I don't know any, but aren't who's like Dallas's like
arch rival?
Yeah,
the Eagles.
Remember
probably?
Mara's comment about the Giants getting to play the Cowboys, and I think he kind of started that little vitriol. I don't know.
Yeah,
I know. For me, it's easy. It's Browns. The Browns.
Well, mine's the Packers.
Yeah, as a Bears guy.
Yeah.
Did you see the social media post about the Lions hanging the banners about keeping it said kept the rival Packers out of the playoffs 2023?
Yeah, hang it up at Ford. I'm all for it.
I love the level of professionalism that some of those teams showed, and like the Commanders, like the Texans, like the Lions, because it would have been, especially in that sport where you're accused of kind of not always having it be about the money. It's good to see those guys lay it on the line.
Hey, when looking at the game tonight, Nebraska, Illinois men's basketball, we already talked yesterday, 8 p.m. tip-off, kind of a late one over at Pinnacle Bank. It's the first home game of 2023, and it's a good one because you get an Illinois team that's coming off of a very solid win against ranked Wisconsin, and you're also getting a Nebraska team that comes back home after that overtime victory against Minnesota. So both teams bounce back after losses. Both teams are actually 4-4 in their last 8 games. What I'm having trouble gauging in this one, though, is I still can't figure out who Illinois is.
I know.
Yet.
I agree with you.
I'm not there yet because I watch Brad Underwood, and I'm a big body language guy when it comes to coaching. And he's somebody that seems to be hard to play for when he's out there. He's always yelling. He's always screaming in your face. When he gets to the podium, he's saying things about certain players, calling them out. And then I'm thinking, like, how do you hold the locker room? Like, how do you really regain respect from your guys after doing this? Or is that something that those players embrace, getting called out so it shows a form of respect in that light? I'm not too sure. I don't know how I'm playing for a guy like Brad Underwood. It can't be easy for one. But Illinois this year is so hard to gauge. You have Terrence Shannon Jr., who is probably the easiest player to dissect on that team.
Yeah, he's a bucket
you
getter.
know he's going to score. You know he can get 2s. He can shoot the 3. They also love to work in transition. They're a very fast team, but they're young. They're new. They replaced all 5 starters and 6 of their top scorers from last season. We're are we close to halfway through the college basketball season? We're getting there. We're inching closer to the halfway point. Isn't it crazy that when you look at a team in the Big Ten of the stature of Illinois and you can't really figure out who they are yet?
Yeah, it's just one of those teams. But I think a lot of it is what you led with, and I think it's Coach Underwood, because I think he's hard to figure out. Right? We've seen some unceremonious L's, especially come tournament time, and the fan base kind of bow their necks a little bit and down on Coach Underwood. And we've seen some of the in-game stuff in terms of decisions late from Coach Underwood. So I think that's on the frontal lobe, right? In terms of how we think about Illinois, and they're playing a lot like their perceived the temperament, the perception of their coach, right? So I think that's part of it. And then you mix in what you talked about with all the new faces, and there's some things you can pencil in. Coleman Hawkins is going to get after the glass. Shannon's going to get buckets. Mayer can shoot it,
and Hawkins has been shooting the 3 well too.
Yeah, I think he's mid-30s in terms of his knockdown percentage. So I mean, they're capable, and we watched them. I mean, they can control that second half really against Wisconsin, and one I felt like they had to have early on. But this is a real capable and real dangerous bunch. The key for me, there's 2, obviously. Number one, you got to take good care of the basketball. That starts with Sam Griesel, making good decisions and control, because he can control tempo, right? He almost never gets sped up. So they controlling the tempo will be
something he did a very good job at when playing Creighton.
And the other thing is, obviously, you have to play through Derek Walker.
That's kind of how their offense runs. Like, you have to make sure that he gets anywhere from 15 to 25
So
points.
the CJ Wilchers of the world that only got the 3 shot attempts last game, Vandemel, who didn't really shoot it well, has not really kind of having that offensive prowess sometimes that I think that he's accustomed to playing with. You have to stay in that rhythm. It can't be makeup from what they didn't do the last game, because Vandemel was fantastic.
And he'll have every other defensively.
Oh yeah, he always guards the best. But I look forward to that matchup. I mean, that's going to be fantastic, because Shannon is a bucket getter, and he'll shoot some shots where you're going to scratch your head. He's one of those, not as bad as a guy like Caleb Love or somebody, but he's not even Baylor Shireman from that aspect. But he is a no yes guy, right? If you're part of that Fighting Illini fan base. But I think Nebraska's definitely got to play this game closer to the 60s to give themselves the best chance to win.
And I think they can, because you look at Illinois and they are elite when they are playing inside the arc. When it comes to scoring, at least, they're shooting over 50% on 2-pointers as a team right now. And their 3-point shooting rate is, second in the Big Ten, something like that. I believe I read that in Jacob Padilla's article, and you can check that out at hailvarsity.com.
Yeah, if you want numbers, Padilla's obviously the guy.
He's a good follow there. But what I was getting at here is Nebraska, and I talked about it after the game or when that Minnesota game, the day that followed. They do such a good job filling the back door, right? When they are in man defense, it's almost like they're in zone at the same time because they play help side so well. And when the ball goes inside, you get an instant double. You're forcing the team to then maybe try to do a cross-court pass and get it to somebody else that they may not
try
be
to ice a lot of ball screens too.
Exactly.
They want the ball on one side.
More comfortable. And they work so quickly defensively that I think they can shut down the inside game to keep it at that 60-point mark.
What's the number, do you think? That this has all the makings of like a
64-59 game.
So I was gonna say close. I was gonna say 69-64. Somewhere around there. 69-66. What's the line?
Looking Nebraska.
I'll be curious to see what the total is.
Should have had it pulled up before.
That's all right.
8 o'clock.
It'd be towards the bottom because it's a later tip.
Right.
But I'm gonna guess 5.
There it is.
I'm gonna guess 5 and 134.
Close. 3 and 137.
3?
Mm-hmm.
God, just a bucket. Is that a 3 at the buzzer? I thought it was 5, which is why I said 69-64. What was the total again?
137.
What's 69 and 64?
133.
Will somebody get to 70?
Apparently. Unless it's, 69, 68, which would be the 137. So
Well,
somebody's got to get to 70.
I'm glad that the total is down, though, because I think that game has to stay in the 60s. Because I just don't see Nebraska touching 70.
That's a pretty average total for the night. I mean, some are creeping into the 140s, but for the most part, 138 and 137 is what's resting tonight in college basketball.
Conference games.
Tons of them.
That's kind of how it goes. Hey, by the way, do you have any idea what happens with SWAC games in the start times last night?
No, I don't.
So, periodically, you go back and I was just checking college basketball scores because I want to see what happened with Oral Roberts. I'm obviously not watching that game, but just because
Summit League,
right? Yeah. And they're playing in Mexico, and the start times kept moving back. One was like at 5:30, then it got moved to 7, and I'm like, how are they just changing the times unless they were typos? Then I saw somebody on Twitter, I think it was G Unit. It might have been Greg Peterson. Didn't we used to talk to Greg, Shane, once upon a time?
Yeah, once upon a time.
He's a capper, and he tweeted out something about trying to follow along with what was going on in the SWAC. And I thought nobody's playing the SWAC conference games in terms of wagering around here. But he must have been, or something like that, because he couldn't keep up with the start times all changed. I just wondered what was going on.
You don't know. There was no answer?
No.
The only thing I can think of is, was there an issue like with the bus and getting to the venue?
The floor. Like I felt like a couple of games changed start times.
So it was more than just the Oral Roberts New Mexico game.
Well, I just happened to notice why there weren't more scores because the last game, one of the things I always want to look at on national championship nights is who's conceding. And a lot of times it's college basketball.
Mm-hmm. Right? Well, when you said, "Hey, I was looking at college basketball,"
even though it was supposed to be Big
basketball.
Monday, even though it's supposed to be Big Monday, right?
Right.
But you're just not doing that. You just go back to Super Tuesday or whatever it is. But I just wanted to know if you,
Max Asmus he's the real deal.
Yeah, hey, you're talking about bucket getters.
Yeah, he's somebody that's like, hey, I'll put the team on my back.
Good on him for coming back too. I wonder what that deal looked like.
How long has he been there?
I don't know, a while. And
because they made their run 2 years ago? Was he a sophomore?
And how has nobody
mentioned him?
Yeah, just like ponied up. Isn't that what folks try to do to the group of college basketball that isn't in that 7? You try to get everybody else's guys.
Max Asmus,
bucket getter,
true bucket getter. We'll talk to Matt Brown next.
Rogers Rogers and Benning will be back in 5 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
Dejon Edwards in the backfield. Play fake. Stet sets up to throw. Pressure coming on. Wide open. McConkey reaches up high. Touchdown. Touchdown, McConkey. Nobody near him.
Boy, just an out and up there by McConkey and not a horned frog in sight.
Back with you on Hail Varsity Radio. It's Coffee and Cream in the morning, live from the H&H Chevrolet stage, powered by Currency. It's Damon Benning, Andrew Rogers, and on the phone, we've got Matt Brown. He is the senior editor of NCAA football for The Athletic. You can follow him on Twitter at Matt Brown CFB. Matt, good morning.
Morning, guys. Thanks for having me.
Hey, Matt. Good morning. How you been? Happy New Year.
All right. A little sad that the season is over and that it ended in such awful fashion. I'm glad at least we got some good semifinals out of it.
Yeah, you know what? Stay there, though, because all season long, this was the best team in college football, a.k.a. Georgia. I'm not really sure what Kirby Smart was saying before the game about being doubted. I don't really think anybody, not at least on our panel up here, DB and I had Georgia going all the way from the very beginning. But what did this win actually reveal for Georgia?
Oh, I mean, we're on the verge of dynasty territory now. I mean, you got the first repeat national champion since Alabama in 2011, 2012, and they chance to be the first three-peat in the poll era. I mean, the last team to three-peat was Minnesota in 1934, 35, and 36. And the 36 was the first year of the AP poll. So nobody's done this. And Georgia's presumably going to open at number one next year. I would think. They're already number one in a lot of the early rankings. And I don't think there's going to be – Kirby Smart's going to have to work a lot harder to try to drum up the disrespect narrative, because I don't think anybody's going to be disrespecting Georgia for a while.
So, Matt, how about the irony of, Pollock, the Georgia guy, sitting next to Saban, the Bama guy, and they're having honest conversations, and they're going back and forth. And, I mean, Coach Saban's had to come to some realizations of some things of his program. Is it simply enough when you look at the landscape, whether it's Michigan or Bama or Ohio State, is being motivated enough, or is there a way to work smarter to play quicker catch up?
I mean, motivation is such a key tool for the teams as they try to sustain dynasties. I mean, that's kind of the most impressive thing about what Nick Saban's done at Alabama is not only, winning multiple national championships, but then constantly reinventing himself and hiring new staffs and dealing with that coaching turnover and dealing with NFL departures. And, Kirby Smart's already done it once, and they've reinvented that offense under Todd Monken. And they've, last year, how many draft picks did they lose from that defense, and to come back and to win a national championship game 65-7, to go 15-0, to, remember they started the season winning 49-3 against Oregon, which finished in the top 15. The battle is always against complacency, and Georgia certainly showed no signs of lack of motivation going into 2022. It's, how do you sustain that? How do you keep trying to invent motivation? Obviously, Georgia has as much talent or more than anybody, but it's, staying fresh on the coaching staff. It's replenishing with all the NFL departures that are surely going to come again.
Yeah, you mentioned, the year prior, and now even like you said, Georgia will lose some stars, but we saw the replacements come in during the fourth, and, frankly, they look just as good. What does this say about Georgia's ability to recruit, and maybe what can teams around the league learn from what they do?
Oh, well, as far as learn, that is tough. Because, we just continue to see this breakaway of the top few teams in terms of talent, like Georgia, Ohio State, Alabama, the way they recruit, and just the portion of top 100 recruits they get. But then again, you look at Georgia, and it's also player development. When you have a walk-on quarterback in Stetson Bennett, and you have Ladd McConkey wasn't exactly a superstar recruit either, and it's a mix of player development and superstar talent and coaching creativity. And I guess if you look at two of those three things, Texas A&M doesn't have it, for example, as a competitor who just signed the number one recruiting class last year, but has not developed at the same rate, has not been creative enough on offense, and has fallen behind. So Georgia kind of is the total package where yes, to compete for national championships or to win national championships, you generally have to sign top 5, top 10 classes, but we've seen that not pan out for Texas repeatedly, or Texas A&M or USC. Georgia is kind of the total package of Kirby Smart bringing over the best of what he learned from Nick Saban and developing a ridiculous recruiting machine, but also developing talent, and just the way that they take advantage of that talent and spread the ball around and have depth. It's kind of taken that to a new level, and it's hard to keep up. That's for sure.
Matt, December has the potential to be a busy month. We're over here trying to problem solve, and with playoff expansion, the portal, early signing period. If we made Jazar for a day, would one go? Would you move them? Something's gonna have to give in that month of December.
Selfishly, I hate the December signing period in recruiting. I liked when it was, February is the big deal, and you had some time to deal with it. And I do think I understand why the early signing period was created. I understand why some say that there should be a signing period before the season. But there are a lot of landmines with dealing with coaching changes in the transfer portal at the same time as signing, and now you're going to have a 12-team playoff. And personally, I would like to see them go back to the old signing period in February and create some time for coaching changes. And the problem with the early signing period is that it's accelerated the timeline for coaching changes. So coaches are getting fired earlier and earlier. It's just created a kind of a giant mess for a couple months. So I do feel like something has to give at some point, because December is just overwhelming for everybody, and it's only going to get more so when you add multiple rounds of playoff games in there.
Matt, TCU proved that you don't need to have a team full of all-stars to make a run. With the college football playoff expanding in the near future, how does seeing a team like that maybe reassure the skeptics that aren't a huge fan of the expansion?
It's interesting because I don't know which way it's going to go, because on one hand, you think one of the reasons for expansion is that it gives more teams a chance, and thus maybe that can break up kind of the recruiting monopoly, or however you term it, in that more teams are going to have a chance, and maybe that'll spread the talent around. The transfer portal can help spread the talent around too, because guys are going to be looking for opportunities, and more teams might be appealing in that more teams can make the playoffs. So in that respect, I think there is hope for more parity, and TCU is kind of a small step toward that. On the other hand, if you add another round of playoffs or 2 rounds of playoffs, it also gets harder for a team like TCU to make a run all the way to the championship. I mean, I think Cinderella runs are certainly harder in football than basketball. And, it was one thing for a team to have a dream season, make the BCS title game, and win one game against a team with top tier talent. Another thing to do it twice, as we saw this year. TCU gets to the playoff, pulls off an upset against a Michigan team that did not play its best game, and then runs into an absolute juggernaut in Georgia that just has more talent, more depth. But now going to 12 teams, a team like TCU is going to have to win extra games and to survive a bigger gauntlet. So I have hope for more parity, but also, I don't know. We'll see if anybody can survive the grind, or if just the top teams rise to the top, because then you fear that an Alabama that was underperformed this year could suddenly start, playing at the peak of its talent and go on a run in the playoffs. So I think you could argue both ways, and it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Would you have liked to have seen a little more conference uniformity before the expansion? Personally,
yeah. I wish that everybody would play 8 conference games, everybody would play 9 conference games. On one hand, I do like the messiness of college football as somebody who's nostalgic for the messiness of the past sometimes, but I don't know. I think it makes sense to try to even the playing field a little bit, especially as we have automatic bids for conference champions and stuff like that. the 8 versus 9 argument and how schedules are rotated, I understand giving some conferences flexibility, but yeah, I think I would like to see some uniformity.
Matt, you're the best, man. We appreciate your time this morning. Have a great day.
You got it. Thanks, guys, for having me.
Thanks, Matt.
That's Matt Brown, senior editor of NCAA football for The Athletic. You can toss him a follow on Twitter again at Matt Brown College Football CFB. Before we go to break, I want to give you a quick nugget about Dingman's Collision Center. They've been in the business for over 25 years in Omaha. They're family-owned and family-run local business. Invest in the latest technology to stay up to date with the ever-evolving technology of your vehicles. They work on all makes and models from Fords to Teslas. 4 locations throughout the metro area, along with a standalone mechanical shop at 120th and Maple. First place, Best of Omaha for 18 years running. Can you believe that, DB?
I can believe it.
Joelle Lorenzi's next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
Hey, back with you to wind down the show. It's Hail Varsity Radio. Coffee and Cream in the morning alongside Damon Benning, Andrew Rogers. We're powered by Currency, and we are live from the H&H Chevrolet stage at Hail Varsity Club. We'll speak to Joelle Lorenzi, hopefully, in a few moments. He's the Creighton beat writer for the Omaha World Herald.
Self-professed. He's not a morning guy.
He isn't. He is not a morning guy, and I'm pretty sure, I'm fairly certain
We have him.
that we could ask him when he went to bed, and I'm going to say it's after
but the
12:30.
latest game was the Sacramento Kings. He probably wasn't watching that. There was only one game in the nines.
Hey, Joelle.
Joelle, is that right?
Don't start, man. Come on. I already know my process. Look, I'll say this. I was cursed with the ability to.
You were cursed with what?
Sit on a plane and fall asleep as soon as I sit down on the plane.
Got it.
That stuff adds up over the weekend, man, and your schedule by the end of the weekend is ruined. So I must have fell asleep like 3 different times, and none of them were decent times.
I don't understand how and God bless you folks that can do it. I have a hard enough time in my own bed. I don't understand how you folks can sleep in public.
In public? What?
Yeah, like on the
Man,
plane,
look,
man. It's like,
well, you know, I'm from Chicago, so I go to sleep clutching my stuff. I got my phone grip tight. I go to sleep. Hey, I'm still on 10.
Hey, I'm from St. Louis. I've clutched up before, too.
Oh, I like that about you. I ain't mad at that, man.
oh shoot! All right, so talk to me. This environment. I was telling Andrew, watching that on television, the fans tugging on jerseys and high-fiving over loose balls, and I mean that place was electric from the jump. Could you tell that UConn felt like that one was must win?
Yes. If it was based on the fans, I mean, yes, for sure. I think that's probably the most electric atmosphere I've been a part of. I don't know. I think Texas was pretty cool too. I like what Texas had going on, but UConn, just the rivalry, haven't had lost 5 or 3, having already lost 2 games straight. That building and that team, I mean, they saved it for post game to talk about how they were, how much that game, not just because they wanted to get in the win column, because they wanted to keep trading. And man, you can see it all the way down to the fence. I mean, dudes were like leaning over the section with beers in their hand. They were wild, man. I mean, there was a field.
We're speaking with Joelle Lorenzi, Creighton beat writer for the Omaha World Herald. Toss him a follow on Twitter at JXLorenzi. Joelle, I was talking to DB about this yesterday, and something that really stands out to me, and it's striking, is the fact that I don't think Creighton can play productive enough basketball against top-ranked opponents like UConn, like a Xavier coming up, unless all 5 of their starters are on the floor. It seemed like to be an issue when Kalk and Nembhard left the floor, that's when UConn really started making their run. Do you see that as an issue too, knowing that, hey, unless we have our top 5 guys out there, I don't really know what to expect from Creighton over the next 8-10 minutes.
Yeah, your eyes aren't really fooling. I think, looking back on the comments made in the summer, and perhaps some of this, the team still has room to grow. But I think for sure we can say when Matt called this team his deepest team ever, there was some exaggeration there. Well, I don't even think there was some exaggeration there. I genuinely think they believe that, and what they think from their bench, at least for short to him, has been flabbergasted. I mean, he had a lot of stock in Reese Mitchell. That hasn't panned out. And Francisco Furbo was a 40+% three-point shooter. He's had very, very rocky season on that front. And so you look at the reserve in the summer, and they look nothing like what was supposed to be the deep team Mac has had. And so that hurts, man. I mean, I look back at the starters play, you're looking at 38, 36, 34. I mean, you're running like this Tom Thibodeau territory. And it's not intentional, but it has to happen because those guys come in and it's like you're losing those minutes. Like I watched Spencer come in, and it's the guy I've been, trying to play devil's advocate with the fans before and beat the and he comes in and he did knock down a three, but then to half, it helps too hard, and I think Newton bet the three in his face to close the half, and that gave UConn up.
Joelle, when you're watching Creighton play, and let's assume they're not shooting it well, they're not knocking it down from behind the arc. The natural inkling is to play through caulk. I understand that. But how do you think a guy like Art fits along with that if that's the way that Creighton wants to play if they're not making shots? Because that seems where it gets a little disjointed.
I think I like the way they've used Art in recent games. I like the way Art has turned the corner. I think he had, 16 rebounds the other day? Frankly, if Art wasn't where he was in a lot of those possessions, they probably lose about 15, 20, man. I mean, he had a handful of offensive rebounds that were giving them the chance to try to win that game. Open shots and Grant, he didn't hit three, but I watched him on constant offensive rebounds. They couldn't stop him on the whole glass, and that team just couldn't knock down an open shot. So on the Art, I like him as a guy who maybe turns the corner and says, okay, well, I'm going to out rebound the hell out of the other team and pose a mismatch threat and maybe fly in for the stuff that Kalkbrenner can't get to. And it's been a good look for him.
Hey, UConn guard Jordan Hawkins called Creighton a top 10 team. This is what you wrote in your article. And I mean, you do great work at the Omaha World Herald, and that's who we're talking to, Joelle Lorenzi. If you want to see his work, go to the Omaha World Herald. And, it felt genuine is how you put it. And I would agree. I mean, people know what Creighton's ceiling is, but how do they start bridging the gap from what they are now to reaching their ceiling?
Yeah, perception versus consistent reality.
Yeah, and when I say it felt genuine, a lot of these guys post game just get the team credit because they have to, right? They're playing a humble role, but even still, like nobody's calling Creighton a top 10 team. So it felt like he was being real, and frankly, most people who have watched the team, seen the stuff that they played and how they've lost some of their games, know that they can be a top 15 team again. It's just not gonna happen soon, I think. So to bridge that gap, obviously they gotta hit open shots. The phenomenon lately has been the shot quality champs. If you go on the shot quality Twitter page, they're gonna win the shot quality championship. I'll tell you that. But will it translate to games is what people are wondering, because you guys, they're getting the open looks, man. They get the open looks with the best of them and teams in the country. The numbers are there to tell you that. For some reason, in the big game, they haven't knocked down shots outside of Arkansas. I mean, that was Thanksgiving, so it's been a while, and frankly, it takes more shot making poise, I think, which probably comes. I mean, basketball is basketball. They'll tell you that. They'll tell you that like a broken record over and over. And so I'd agree with most of it, but you do need that stuff to fall on your side, and I think you can't control outside of that. The way you respond to ball pressure. I didn't think the way they responded to ball pressure the other day was necessarily ideal. The way you use second chances, like the ones Kaluma gave you, just little stuff like that. It adds up, man. Even like I was talking about, Mitchell helping too hard that one possession. That stuff that you chalk up like whatever the course of the game happened. That stuff adds up, and so when you shoot 2-16 from three, you wish you get those possessions back. So I think they got to hone in on that stuff, the smaller stuff that they control.
So the last 60 seconds here, Joelle, is it as simple as it's not? How do they neutralize Fremantle and Boom, right? Because that seems to be how Xavier goes. They got off against Nova, and it's their version of Nemhart and Kalk. Like, what do you see?
Yeah. With Boom, he's just a crafty veteran shot maker. And this is a guy who really, I think, excelled as a point guard more than most people thought he would. So the challenge, it's a tall task, but you got to just depend on Trey Alexander. Trey Alexander, a lot of times, he's done well in these assignments. He's caught the short end of the stick because the perimeter defense look around it's pretty lacking. And so when it's not him on the floor, it's not guarding somebody, and the team has multiple options, it's tough. But I think I think I don't know. You just gotta hope and trust that he could, keep Booms out there maybe 10 points. Yeah.
Joelle, we appreciate you, man. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll talk again next week.
Thanks, Joelle.
Hey, and if you want to hear more from the show, head over to your favorite podcast app. We'll go to Morning Dump next. But for Coffee and Cream, we'll see you tomorrow.